Today we are going to talk about a very strange problem that millions of people experience. You go to bed, you fall asleep, but suddenly, in the middle of the night, you wake up. Sometimes it happens at 2 in the morning, sometimes exactly at 3. You open your eyes, look at the clock, and think, why did I wake up again? Your sleep seemed normal. You were tired, but falling asleep again suddenly becomes very difficult. Some people notice that their heart starts beating faster at that moment. Others feel a sense of internal tension. Some simply lie there and stare at the ceiling. And the strangest part is that in the morning you feel as if you did not rest at all. If this happens rarely, it is usually not a big problem. But if it repeats almost every night, the body can gradually become exhausted. Many people begin searching for a solution. Some take different supplements. Others try herbal remedies. Some try going to bed earlier. But the results are often temporary. And the reason for this is actually quite simple. Most people try to fix the consequences, but they do not understand what actually triggers these nighttime awakenings. When I first began studying this topic, I also thought the main cause was stress. And yes, stress does influence sleep. But over time it became clear that there is a deeper mechanism, and it is connected to how the brain works at night. When a person falls asleep, the body does not shut down. In fact, the opposite happens. A huge amount of work begins. The brain continues functioning actively. It processes information. It restores neural connections. It regulates the hormonal system. And for all of this work, it needs energy. But at night, the brain does not receive energy from food because we are asleep. Instead, it receives energy from the body's internal reserves. The main source of this energy is the liver, and this is where an important detail appears. At night, the liver performs several tasks at the same time. It helps maintain a stable energy supply for the brain. It participates in the body's natural detoxification processes. It regulates metabolism. It helps maintain hormonal balance. And if liver function becomes disrupted, the brain may begin receiving signals that something is wrong. But this does not happen in the way many people imagine. The brain does not simply wake up. Instead, it receives a signal that energy levels may be dropping. When that happens, the body activates a protective mechanism. This mechanism works very quickly. It triggers the release of adrenaline. Adrenaline instantly increases available energy. But there is one side effect. Adrenaline is also a wakefulness hormone. It can abruptly pull a person out of sleep. And that is why many people suddenly wake up in the middle of the night. Without any obvious reason, sometimes even with a feeling of internal tension. But to fully understand why this happens, we need to look at another important process. This process is connected to blood sugar levels. During the night, blood sugar does not remain perfectly stable. It is constantly being regulated. Sometimes it rises slightly, sometimes it falls. Normally, the body easily manages these changes, but if metabolism is not working optimally, these fluctuations can become stronger, and then the brain may receive a signal that energy is becoming insufficient. At that moment, the body activates an emergency response, and that is when you suddenly open your eyes in the middle of the night. But this is only part of the story, because there is another factor that influences sleep much more strongly than many people realize. This factor is connected to our internal biological clock, and it determines when the body should sleep, when it should wake up, and when certain hormones should be released. But modern lifestyles can seriously disrupt these internal clocks, and when that happens, sleep becomes unstable. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about now. To understand why many people wake up around 3 o'clock in the morning, we need to understand how our internal biological rhythm works. Inside the body, there's a system called circadian rhythms. These are internal clocks that regulate almost all processes in the body. They control the timing of sleep and wakefulness. They regulate body temperature. They influence hormone production, and they even determine when the body recovers most effectively. The main center of these internal clocks is a small area of the brain that receives information about light. When natural light reaches the eyes in the morning, the brain receives a signal. A new day has begun. In response, the body begins producing wakefulness hormones. The most important of these hormones is cortisol. Many people think of cortisol only as a stress hormone. But in reality, it has a very important function. It helps the body wake up. It increases energy levels. It activates metabolism. And it helps us feel alert in the morning. The problem begins when this rhythm becomes disrupted. For example, when a person rarely goes outside in the morning, when they spend most of their time indoors, when the lighting around them in the evening is too bright, and especially when someone spends a long time looking at a phone or computer screen before bed. Blue light from screens and LED lamps is perceived by the brain as daylight. The brain thinks that the day is still continuing, and it begins shifting the internal clock. As a result, the cortisol peak may occur not in the morning but much earlier, sometimes at 4 in the morning, sometimes even at 3. And at that moment a person suddenly wakes up, even though the body should still be resting. But there is another important factor. As people age, the so-called sleep pressure gradually decreases. Sleep pressure is the natural force that makes us feel sleepy in the evening. When a person moves actively during the day, uses energy, and works their muscles, sleep pressure increases. By the evening, a strong desire to sleep appears. But if the day passes with very little movement, sleep pressure becomes weaker. A person may lie in bed and not feel real sleepiness, and during the night the sleep becomes lighter. Any small signal can wake the body. That is why physical activity plays such an important role in sleep quality. Even a simple walk can noticeably improve sleep. But strength exercises or physical work can be even more effective. This kind of activity helps the body build up stronger sleep pressure. And in the evening, the body naturally moves toward deep rest. There is another factor that also influences sleep. Stimulants, for example, coffee. Caffeine can remain in the body for quite a long time, sometimes up to 8 hours. That means if someone drinks coffee later in the afternoon, it may influence nighttime sleep. Not necessarily completely, but enough to make sleep less deep. And when sleep becomes lighter, the chances of waking up during the night increase. There are also certain minerals that help the nervous system relax. One of the most well-known is magnesium. Magnesium participates in hundreds of processes inside the body. It helps muscles relax. It supports the normal functioning of the nervous system, and it contributes to calmer sleep. Some people notice that taking magnesium in the evening helps them fall asleep more easily. However, it is important to understand that supplements alone rarely solve the problem completely. They can help, but only if the main cause has been addressed. And in most cases, the main cause is connected to lifestyle. For example, light exposure. When a person receives enough natural light in the morning, circadian rhythms begin to gradually stabilize. Cortisol starts rising exactly when it should, in the morning, and in the evening the body moves more easily into rest mode. On the other hand, if there is little light in the morning, but too much bright light in the evening, the internal clock slowly becomes disrupted. That is why one of the simplest recommendations is to go outside in the morning for a short time. Even 10 or 15 minutes of natural daylight can have a noticeable effect. In the evening, about 2 or 3 hours before sleep, it is better to reduce bright lighting. This helps the brain understand that the day is coming to an end, and gradually the body begins producing melatonin. Melatonin is the sleep hormone. It signals to the body that it is time to rest. When melatonin levels rise, the body begins to relax. Body temperature slightly decreases, thoughts become calmer, and sleep begins much more easily. But besides hormones and light, there's another organ that strongly influences sleep during the night. This organ is the liver. People rarely talk about its role in sleep, but in reality, it performs enormous work during the night, and if its functions are disrupted, this can directly affect sleep quality. We will talk about the role the liver plays in nighttime recovery next, because this is where another key to understanding nighttime awakenings may be hidden. Now let us talk about another organ that plays a very important role in the quality of our sleep. Surprisingly, most people almost never connect it with nighttime awakenings. We are talking about the liver. When a person goes to sleep, the liver does not rest. On the contrary, it performs a large part of its work during the night. The liver helps regulate energy levels. It processes nutrients. It participates in maintaining the internal balance of the body. It helps remove metabolic byproducts, and it also influences the hormonal system. But there is one important detail. During the night, the brain depends heavily on how the liver works, because it is the liver that supplies the brain with energy. When we do not eat for several hours, the body begins using its internal reserves. The liver stores a certain amount of glycogen. Glycogen is a stored form of glucose. During the night, glycogen is gradually released and helps maintain a stable supply of energy for the brain. Under normal conditions, these reserves are enough for the brain to function calmly throughout the night. But if metabolism becomes unstable, this process may not work smoothly. Sometimes energy levels can drop quickly. Sometimes they can rise suddenly, and the body constantly has to regulate this balance. Imagine that the brain receives a signal. Energy is becoming lower. What happens next? The body activates a protective response. It releases hormones that help increase energy quickly. One of these hormones is adrenaline. Adrenaline immediately mobilizes energy reserves. But at the same time, it activates the nervous system. It increases heart rate. It increases alertness. And that is exactly why a person may suddenly wake up, sometimes very abruptly, with the feeling that the body has suddenly switched on. But many people describe the same experience. They wake up and feel that falling asleep again becomes very difficult. It feels as if the brain has suddenly become fully active. Thoughts begin to move quickly. This happens because the body has activated an emergency energy response. But why does the liver begin to work less steadily? There can be several reasons. One of the most common is late-night snacking. When a person eats right before going to sleep, the body does not have time to enter rest mode. The digestive system continues working actively. Blood sugar levels may increase. Then the body releases insulin in order to reduce them. As a result, energy levels begin fluctuating. And during the night, these fluctuations may become even stronger. That is why one of the simplest rules for improving sleep is finishing your last meal several hours before bedtime. This allows the body to complete digestion, and the liver can calmly switch to its nighttime tasks. Another factor is a diet high in highly processed foods. These foods often contain large amounts of sugar and refined carbohydrates. When such foods regularly appear in the diet, metabolism begins to function differently. The body must constantly regulate blood sugar levels. This creates additional work for the liver. Over time, its ability to maintain stable energy balance may decrease. There are also foods that support normal liver function. For example, foods that contain choline. Choline participates in fat metabolism and helps the liver perform its functions. It is found in egg yolks, in some types of fish, in meat, and in certain vegetables. Another group of compounds important for the liver are sulfur-containing substances. These compounds participate in the body's natural detoxification processes. They are found in garlic, in onions, and in cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli or cabbage. These foods may support healthy metabolic processes, but it is important to understand that this is not about one magical food. It is about the overall balance of the diet. When nutrition becomes more natural and diverse, the body tends to function more steadily, and over time, this can influence sleep quality. There's also another factor that people rarely think about. The gallbladder. It is closely connected to the liver. The gallbladder stores bile. This fluid participates in digesting fats. If bile becomes too thick or its flow becomes irregular, discomfort may appear. Some people feel heaviness under the right ribs. Sometimes the discomfort spreads to the back or shoulder area. This happens because many nerve endings pass through that region. When pressure in this area increases, signals can travel along nerve pathways, and this can influence the general state of the body, sometimes even sleep quality. But the good news is that many of these processes can gradually improve. With small lifestyle changes, regular walks, balanced nutrition, avoiding late-night snacking, and maintaining a healthy rhythm of light and darkness. All these factors together help stabilize the body's internal balance, and sleep gradually becomes deeper. But there is another important point we need to discuss. It relates to what kind of fuel the brain uses during the night. Because the brain does not rely only on glucose, and when this mechanism begins functioning properly, sleep quality can improve significantly. This is what we will talk about next. Now let us talk about another important point that is often overlooked. Most people believe that the brain can work only on glucose. In other words, the sugar that circulates in the blood. But in reality, the brain has another source of energy, and in many cases, this source can be even more stable. These molecules are called ketones. Ketones are special molecules that the body begins to produce when the amount of carbohydrates in the diet becomes lower. At that moment, the body begins using fats more actively as a source of fuel, and the liver converts part of these fats into ketones. What is interesting is that a large part of the brain can use ketones as an energy source, and it does this very efficiently. When the brain begins receiving energy from ketones, blood sugar levels tend to become more stable, and that means there are fewer sudden drops in energy during the night. This may reduce the chances of waking up in the middle of sleep. However, there is an important detail. When a person first reduces carbohydrates in the diet, the body needs time to adapt. This adaptation period may take several days, sometimes around a week. During this time, The body gradually switches to the new energy source. Because of this, some people may notice small changes in how they feel during the first few days. But when the adaptation process is complete, the body begins functioning more steadily, and many people notice that their sleep becomes deeper. However, nutrition is only one part of the overall picture. There are several simple steps that can significantly improve sleep quality. The first step is finishing your last meal earlier. It is best if several hours pass between dinner and bedtime. This allows the body to complete digestion and then shift into recovery mode. The second step is paying attention to morning light. Natural daylight helps synchronize the body's internal biological clock. Even a short walk in the morning can help the body understand when the day begins and when it is time to sleep. The third step is reducing bright light in the evening, especially light from screens. Too much bright light in the evening can delay the release of melatonin. Melatonin plays a key role in initiating sleep. That is why softer lighting in the evening helps the body gradually move into rest mode. The fourth step is regular physical activity. Movement during the day helps the body use energy, and in the evening this supports deeper rest. Even a simple walk or light exercise can make a noticeable difference. The fifth step is paying attention to nutrition. Balanced meals that contain enough protein, healthy fats, and essential nutrients help maintain stable metabolism, and this means more stable energy levels during the night. The sixth step is creating a calm evening routine. This may include reading a book, taking a quiet walk, or simply spending some time without screens and bright light. Such habits allow the nervous system to gradually reduce activity and prepare for sleep. When all these factors begin working together, the body slowly restores its natural rhythm. Sleep becomes deeper. Nighttime awakenings become less frequent. And in the morning a person wakes up feeling truly rested. But perhaps the most important conclusion is something else. Our body is a very complex system, and often small lifestyle changes can produce much greater effects than we expect. Sometimes it is enough to adjust light exposure, slightly change nutrition, add more movement, and the body begins responding, gradually, calmly, without extreme interventions. And if you have ever woken up during the night and asked yourself why it happens, now you understand that there may be very natural processes behind it. The body is simply trying to maintain balance, and when we help it do that, it responds in the most natural way, with deep, calm, restorative sleep.